Good evening everyone. I welcome you all to Ganesh IAS Academy. In today's session, we will be seeing science and technology based current affairs from the date February 1st to February 7th, 2024. Let us get into the news articles one by one. E-ink display. So what is e-ink display? We must have to understand this in greater detail. E-ink displays are a special type of screen technology. So it is a screen technology here, and then it is often used in e-readers like Amazon Kindle. Okay, in Amazon Kindle you must have seen this e-readers. Okay, there they use this e-ink display. So how is it different from other kind of displays? That we have to understand here. So with their crisp paper-like screens, e-ink displays are a pleasure to read on. So they have crisp and paper-like screens. Okay, so it will be like we reading paper. Okay, it won't be like we reading from a digital display. Okay, next is the technology was originally developed in 1990s in MIT, and then it is now owned by e-ink Corporation. Okay, so what is the working of this e-ink displays? So here the screen works using tiny microcapsules filled with positively charged white particles and then negatively charged black particles, which are suspended in the fluid inside the display. Okay, so this is how it will be. Positively charged white particles and then negatively charged black particles will be there, and then they will be suspended in the fluid inside each microcapsules. Okay, so this is one microcapsule in which positive and negatively charged particles are there. Okay, next is by applying positive and negative electrical charges to different areas of the screen. Here the white or black particles can be made to rise to the surface. Okay, and then thus creating the text and image on the display. So this is how it works. So either black rises or the white rises according to the charge that we are supplying. Okay, so this is how it works. What are all the advantages of this e-ink display when compared to other displays that we have? Okay, so here unlike LCD and LED, that is liquid crystal display, and then LED, light emitting diode displays, okay, which uses backlight. So both LCD and LED uses backlight, whereas e-ink displays reflect light just like the paper does, the normal paper does, that we use. It reflects light, right? In the same way, in the similar way, this e-ink display reflects the light rather than using a backlight. Okay, and this makes them easier on the eyes for long reading sessions. So if we have to go for long reading sessions, then viewing a LCD display or LED display might be a big strain to your eyes, but this won't be there in case of e-ink displays. Okay, next is they also require very little power, since they do not need a backlight and only use energy when the image changes. So if I'm going to fix an image in the display, and if I'm not going to change the image at all, then there won't be any there won't be any loss of power. Okay, so power is saved here. So it requires very little power, and then lack of backlighting also means that they are easier to read under brighter lighting conditions. Okay, say for example, if we are going to take that screen to a brighter light conditions like open sunlight conditions, then in the case of LCD and LED, we won't be able to read it properly in brighter conditions. Okay, we must have to adjust brightness, and even after adjusting brightness and other things, we won't be able to read it clearly. Okay, but in case of e-ink displays, this is made possible. Okay, it will be just like we reading from a normal paper. Okay, so that is the advantage with e-ink displays. So are there any disadvantages? Yes, there are. What are they? They have slow refresh rate when compared to LCD and LED rate. Okay, so The refresh rate here is slower, thus it is unsuitable for video or animation. Okay, so for video and animation to be made, the refresh rate has to be very fast. Next is, they have limitations of color and resolution when compared to other display technologies. Okay, here the colors are limited, but in LCD and LED we have wide range of colors. Okay, but here limited colors. Okay, and then they are expensive, especially in larger sizes, and this limits their use mostly to e-readers only. Okay, so only e-readers are using this e-ink displays. That is because it is expensive in larger sizes. Okay, so this is what we need to understand from this particular topic, that is e-ink displays. Now we are going to see about trans fatty acids. Why are trans fatty acids in news? Let us understand that. World Health Organization has awarded its first ever certificates, which is validating progress in eliminating industrially produced trans fatty acids to 5 countries. What are all the 5 countries here? It is Denmark, Lithuania, Poland, Saudi Arabia and Thailand. And each of these countries have demonstrated that they have best practice policy for industrially produced trans fatty acid elimination. So they have policy for eliminating trans fatty acid. Which trans fatty acid? Industrially produced TFA, trans fatty acid. Okay, and it is also supported by adequate monitoring and enforcement systems in their country. Okay, and then WHO has also released results from the first 5 years of the Replace initiative of WHO, which is there for eliminating this industrially produced trans fatty acids. So we must have to understand the details of what is this Replace technology, and basically we must know what are all the best practices that we have. Other than that, we must also understand what is trans fatty acid. So all this will be covered here. Okay, so what is this Replace initiative of WHO, which is there to eliminate industrially produced trans fatty acid? Let us see that. What is Replace? Replace is nothing but review, promote, legislate, assess, create and enforce. The first letters, replace. Okay, so what is review? We have to review the dietary sources of industrially produced trans fat and the landscape for required policy change. This is the first initiative. This is the first objective. Next is promote. What should we promote? Promote the replacement of industrially produced trans fat with healthier fats and oils. This is promoting. Next is legislate or enact regulatory actions to eliminate industrially produced trans fat. So legislation, the government supported legislation has to be there. Next is assess and monitor trans fat content in the food supply and changes in trans fat consumption in the population. So how has the trans fat consumption changed among the population? This has to be assessed and monitored. Next is create awareness of the negative health impacts of trans fat among policy makers, producers, suppliers and even the public. Okay, next is to enforce compliance with the policies and regulations. We have policies and regulations, it has to be complied to. Okay, so all these things are the objectives of the Replace initiative of WHO, which is there for eliminating industrially produced trans fatty acid. Okay, what else do we have to understand? The best practices and other things. Okay, so while the ambitious target which was set by WHO in the year 2018, what was the target? It is to fully eliminate this industrially produced trans fatty acid from the global food supply by the end of 2023, but this was not achieved. Okay, so it was not met. In spite of that, many countries have made remarkable progress in terms of making best practice policies. Okay, so what are they? In 2023 alone, new best practice policies became effective in 7 countries like Egypt, Mexico, Moldova, Nigeria, North Macedonia, Philippines, and Ukraine. In all these countries, best practice policies were adopted. So, what is this best practices in elimination of TFA, that is ITFA? Here, the policy follows WHO criteria and the limit which is there, which has to be applied to all other settings. Okay, so there are two best practice policy options. The first policy option is mandatory national limit of 2 grams of ITFA per 100 grams of the total fat in all foods. This can be done, or else mandatory national ban on production or use of partially hydrogenated oils as an ingredient in all the food source. And what are these partially hydrogenated oil? They are the major source of the trans fat here. Okay, we'll be dealing about trans fat, what trans fat are. Okay, so these are all the two best practices, best practice policy that is there. Options are there which the countries can adopt, and these countries have adopted it in the year 2023. So though we did not meet the global target, countries are making progress. That is what we need to understand here. Next is trans fatty acid. We are talking a lot about trans fatty acid, but what trans fatty acid is? Okay, so they are semi-solid or solid fats that occur in two forms, either industrially produced or it can even be naturally occurring. Okay, so statements like this are very important from your exam point of view. Okay, a statement might go like this: trans fatty acids are only industrially produced. No, they are also naturally occurring. Okay, next is trans fat is a type of unsaturated fat. This is also an important fact to be noted, that they are an unsaturated fat which is harmful to human body, and they are widely regarded as the worst type of fat to consume, and it raises bad cholesterol while decreasing the good cholesterol level in human blood. Okay, next is intake of TFA is associated with increased risk of heart attack and death from heart diseases. So humans are prone to heart diseases when they consume trans fatty acid, okay, or the trans fat. What else do we have to understand from trans fatty acid? That there are two types of trans fatty acid. One is artificially produced, that is industrially produced, and the other one is the naturally occurring. So how are they produced and how is it naturally occurring? We need to know that. So artificial TFAs are formed when hydrogen is made to react with the oil to produce fats which resemble pure ghee or butter. Okay, so hydrogenation process, partially hydrogenation is done. Okay, partial hydrogenation. So in our diet, the major sources of artificial TFAs are partially hydrogenated vegetable oils or vanaspati or arginine. Okay, while the natural TFAs are present in meats, dairy products, though they are present only in very small amounts. Okay, so naturally occurring TFA are very meager amount. Okay, next is TFA containing oils can be preserved longer. Why are we going for this TFA? That is because it can be preserved longer. They give the food the desired shape and texture and can easily substitute pure ghee. So they can be used as a substitute to pure ghee. Pure ghee is expensive. Okay, so they can be used as a substitute for pure ghee, and these are comparatively far lower in cost and thus add to the profit or saving. Okay, and this TFA have no known health benefits, and the foods the foods which are high in ITFA, that is industrially produced TFA, like fried foods, cakes and ready-made meals, are often high in sugar, fat and salt. All are very harmful to human health. Okay, so this is what we need to know from this particular topic, that is trans fatty acid, and the recent recognition given by World Health Organization to 5 countries for their best practices. Okay, now we are going to discuss about northern white rhino. So what are northern white rhinos? Why are they in news? And other details we need to understand here. The northern white rhino is one of the most endangered animals on the planet with only 2 females left alive. Okay, so there are only 2 females alive in the population of northern white rhino. Okay, so thus they are most endangered. And the death of the last male northern white rhino in the year 2018 made surrogacy the only viable option for species regeneration. Okay, so for this species to be regenerated, surrogacy is the only left out option. Okay, that is because the last male has expired and then we have only 2 females, and there is a problem with this 2 females also. What is that? That the remaining 2 females, Najin and Fatu, they are found incapable of reproduction for pathological reasons. So due to certain pathological reasons, they are unfit for reproduction. So even if we have sperm from the deceased male northern white rhino which lived in 2018, we cannot fertilize these 2 females. That is because there are certain pathological reasons due to which they cannot be, they are not fit for reproduction. Okay, so the only option left here is surrogacy. Okay, so who is going to be the surrogate mother here? That is what we need to understand, and we must also understand what is surrogacy basically and how are they going to apply this, what method is going to be employed here. All these details we must have to know. So to rescue this species, that is northern white rhino, scientists have embarked on ambitious project named BioRescue in the year 2015 itself, 3 years before the death of the last male. Okay, employing reproductive technologies like in vitro fertilization and stem cell techniques. So here they have used in vitro fertilization. We'll be understanding what in vitro fertilization in detail. Okay, so recently international consortium, that is BioRescue, has announced the first ever rhino pregnancy through a lab-made embryo transferred to southern white rhino. Okay, so southern white rhino is going to be the surrogate mother here. That is what is important. Okay, this southern white rhino is going to carry the baby of the northern white rhino. Okay, so it is a lab-grown embryo or lab-made embryo, and the only hope for this northern white rhino is to use the frozen sperm from the deceased males and the eggs from the females, the 2 females which are living now, okay, to create embryos in the laboratory and then implant them in the surrogate mothers from southern white rhino subspecies, which is more abundant and genetically similar. These southern white rhinos are abundant in number and then they are genetically similar, thus they have been chosen as a surrogate mother. Okay, but there is a problem with this also. So there are certain limiting factors that they cannot be going for cross breeding. We cannot cross breed southern white rhino and northern white rhino. That is because it would result in the loss of the unique attributes of the northern white rhino, which is adapted to swampy habitats. Okay, so if we go for cross breeding now, then it would lead to loss of unique attributes of the northern white rhino, and the embryos used in this process, the current process, are derived from the eggs of the 2 males and the sperm from the deceased male. So here we need to understand that the gene pool is limited. There is no gene variety. There are only, we have sperm from 1 male and then 2 females. Only that much is available. So with that, we must have to develop the population of northern white rhino using southern white rhino as surrogate mothers. Okay, so thus here the limiting factor is the gene pool itself. Okay, next is conservation. So this conservation has been given importance by the critics here. Okay, so critics argue that the focus should not only be on the species regeneration but also on addressing the root causes of the extinction of the species like habitat threats and poaching. Okay, it is good that you are going for species regeneration, but after they come into play, after they land, they should not be facing the same threats again, which will again lead to their extinction. Okay, so they have to be provided safe haven. So this is what is the focus of the critics here. Okay, so they are targeting the conservation strategies. Next is, we already saw that the southern white rhino will be acting as surrogate mother. So what surrogacy is? Okay, surrogacy is an arrangement in which the women, the surrogate women, carry and give birth to a child on behalf of another person or couple. They are called as the intended person. So here the northern white rhinos are the intended parents and the southern white rhino is the surrogate. This is how we have to understand here. And then the surrogate is also sometimes called as gestational carrier. Okay, northern white rhino giving their baby to southern white rhino. Okay, so this is how it works. Next is, we saw that in vitro fertilization technique was employed. Okay, so what is this in vitro fertilization? It is a process of fertilization where the egg is combined with the sperm in vitro. So what is in vitro? In vitro means in glass, in test tubes, petri dishes. Okay, so if it is done in glass, then it is called as in vitro. Vitro here means glass. Okay, so it is not happening naturally, but it is happening artificially in test tubes. Okay, glass test tubes. So what is the process involved here in vitro fertilization? The first process is monitoring and stimulating the patient's ovulatory process. So the first step here is the hormonal treatment to stimulate egg production. Next is removing an ovum or ova from their ovaries. The eggs are to be removed. So egg collection is the second process. Next is sperm sample, sperm collection is done. And then comes letting sperm fertilize them into a culture medium in the laboratory. This is the final step, that is egg and sperm combined for fertilization. After fertilization happens, embryo or the fertilized egg is placed in the incubation for 48 hours and then it is placed or implanted into the uterus of the surrogate mother. Okay, so this is how in vitro fertilization works. Okay, I hope this is clear. So with this we have come to end of this particular topic. The topic that we are going to discuss now is lab grown fish meat. Okay, so why is lab grown fish meat and which institute has initiated this process in India? Let us understand all that in detail. In a first of its kind initiative, the Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute has launched a project to develop this lab grown fish meat. Why? To address the growing demand of seafood in the country. So in India, we have a growing demand for seafood. Thus, to address that problem, this initiative has been done. Okay, so that is development of lab grown fish meat. So here the cultivated fish meat or the lab grown fish meat is produced by isolating specific cells from the fish and then growing it in the laboratory using animal component free media. Okay, and then the final product that we get from this process will replicate the original flavor, texture and even the nutritional qualities of the fish. Okay, even the nutritional qualities, flavor, texture, everything is retained. Okay, everything is maintained by this process. So what is the significance of this particular initiative and how is it going to help the society? So it will address the ever-growing demand of seafood and reduce the excessive pressure on the wild resources. Okay, there is an excessive pressure on the wild resources, on the marine species, that will be reduced now. Next is, it would help in minimizing overfishing and protecting marine environment as we saw, and then it would also ensure food and nutritional security. Okay, so both food and nutritional security is ensured with the help of this initiative. And then this lab grown fish meat would be antibiotic and environmental contamination free. So it is antibiotic free and environmental contamination free. Okay, when we go for the wild fishes, then they are contaminated with environmental contamination, contaminants and even certain antibiotics. Okay, so this will not be there with respect to this lab grown fish. What else do we have to know about the institute here? Okay, so the Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute will initially focus on developing cell based meat of the fishes of these species, that is pomfret, kingfish and seerfish. And talking about this institute, it was established by the government of India in 1947 and it comes under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, and it has its headquarters at Kochi in Kerala. Okay, and recently a number of countries have made great strides in this pioneering technology, that is lab grown fish meat. Okay, and what are all the countries here? Israel is the front runner, which is followed by Singapore, United States and China. Okay, so this is what we need to know from this particular topic, that is lab grown fish meat. The topic that we are going to discuss now is high velocity air fuel spray technique. So what is this high velocity air fuel spray technique? And this technique will be employed as an alternative to what technique? What other technique? This we need to understand. Okay. So scientists from International Advanced Research Center for Powder and Metallurgy and New Materials, which is an autonomous institute of the Department of Science and Technology of India, it has carried out the synthesis of thin hard coatings of a composite alloy of three metals. What are they? Tungsten, cobalt and chromium by high velocity air fuel spraying. That is why it is in news. So here we need to understand about the high velocity air fuel spraying, and it is going to serve as an alternative to what technique? Okay. So a new technique of synthesizing thin hard surface coatings by high velocity air fuel spraying has the potential for emerging as an environmental friendly, safer alternative to hard chrome plating. So at present we have hard chrome plating for certain applications, and this high velocity air fuel spray technique will be replacing or will be serving as an alternative to this technique, that is hard chrome plating. Okay, so we need to understand what hard chrome plating also, which is used in car parts, tools and other kitchen utensils. Okay, so now let us understand chrome plating and what is the need for this alternative. Chrome plating is used as it is hard and wear resistant. Okay, when certain parts of an utensil or car body parts, if they are going to be chrome plated, then they will give you hardness and they will also give you wear resistant properties. Okay, however, it consists of chromates, fluorides and hexavalent chromium, making it carcinogenic in nature. Okay, so when we go for chrome plating, then it involves release of chromates, fluorides and hexavalent chromium, which are carcinogenic in nature. What is carcinogenic? Cancer causing. Okay, so chrome plating, what is chrome plating? It is a process by which a thin layer of chromium is deposited on a metal surface using electroplating process. So what is electroplating here? The process of depositing a layer of any desired metal on another material by means of electricity is called as electroplating. So this is how chrome plating is done, but here the chromium layer is highly reflective and it provides a hard durable surface which is resistant to corrosion. That is why chrome plating is done. But why do we need an alternative? That is because it is having carcinogenic substances in it. Okay, it releases carcinogenic substances, cancer causing substances. So the process of chrome plating involves the use of hexavalent chromium, which is a known human carcinogen, and it can cause respiratory problems, skin irritation and even increased risk of lung cancer when inhaled. And it can also cause skin irritation and allergic reactions, and it can be toxic when ingested. Okay, and then this has initiated the researchers' search for a safer and environment friendly alternative with an equivalent or superior wear resistance but crack free coating. That is what is now we have. Okay, that high velocity deposition, high velocity air fuel spraying technique. So Generally, thermal spray is a group of technique to deposit wide variety of coatings for various industrial applications to reduce wear and tear and also to improve corrosion. This is generally thermal spraying. Okay, but this conventional thermal spray technique, with this, the thickness builds up and then several grinding and polishing operations are needed to acquire the required thickness and roughness. So, in case of thermal spraying, the thickness builds up, and to reach the required thickness and roughness, we must have to go for grinding operations and polishing operations. Okay, but this new technique called as high velocity air fuel, involving low temperatures and high particle velocity, can deposit coatings using finer sized powders, that is 5 to 15 micrometers, mu meters. Okay, so this is what we need to know here, that it involves low temperature and high particle velocity. So thus there is no need for extra grinding and polishing with respect to this technology. Okay. So how does this work? The process here in this high velocity air fuel spraying technology, the coating technology involves combustion of propane within the compressed air stream, generating consistently high velocity jet. Thus consistently high velocity jet is already present, and here we are going to introduce the material. Okay, so in this process the material is introduced into the air fuel stream, high velocity air fuel stream, thus propelling the coating particles towards the target component. So this is how it is done. And what are all the benefits of this spraying technique? That it operates at low temperature and high particle velocity is there, and they also use finer sized powders, and then it reduces the need for grinding processes like we already saw, which is necessary in the case of thermal spraying. Okay, next is better wear resistance than hard chrome plating. Okay, this was also one of the objective to create. Okay, next is better alternative for heavy load applications like hydraulic shafts and valves. Okay, so this is what we need to know about this high velocity air fuel spray technique. Okay. Fentanyl. What are fentanyl? Let us understand. Recently, discussions between America and China have centered around the collaborative initiative aimed at curbing the influx of fentanyl into United States. Okay, and this fentanyl, a synthetic opioid, which is a type of drug, has caused chaos in America, and it contains ingredients which are made in China. That is why they both are discussing this issue. So here, from exam perspective and from science and technology perspective, we have to know details about this fentanyl. Okay, so what is this fentanyl? Fentanyl is a potent synthetic opioid which is authorized by Food and Drug Administration of United States, and then it is 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. Okay, and then it is typically used to treat severe pain, like the pain which is experienced by cancer patients and those undergoing surgery. Okay, however, it is also sometimes made illegally and sold for recreational use. This is where the problem occurs. So when they are made illegally and they are sold for recreational use, that becomes a problem, that becomes a chaos, menace. Okay, so it is often mixed with heroin, cocaine and methamphetamine, meth. Okay, and formed into pills resembling the prescription opioids. Okay, and then this fentanyl is highly addictive and can be deadly, especially in large doses or when combined with other drugs. So that is why it is being a threat now. We must have to address this threat. Okay, if it is illegally sold for recreational purposes. Okay, so this is what we need to know about this particular topic, that is fentanyl. Okay, so with this we have come to end of today's session. I hope you found the session to be very useful and informative. Let us see in the next session. Thank you all.